All right, friends, welcome to another episode of Undertaking the Colts. I almost said the Polts. How about that? Undertaking the Colts. So you've got Blake JB, and then they brought in their third fella as well to this. So just something a little bit different, just kind of a recap for Indiana. So Indianapolis Colts, they've had a week, I'll say that. It's been interesting as to some of the headlines, and these guys go deeper into that a little bit. So real quick, your sponsors today, Love Always Project. The lovealwaysproject.org, Dean Lambert, episode 346 is over there. Talks about, the ultimate gift of love when it comes to planning a funeral and having that put together already. He talks about the mission there at www.lovealwaysproject.org. He's got an interesting story. It gets very, very deep in that episode, and he talks more about it. So next sponsor is Gather, gather.app. The easiest way to manage your crematory, your mortuary, just your business in general. They do case management, QR body tracking, funeral live streaming, and then websites as well. So Zach Chatterton over there. I don't know why I hissed it in the in the microphone, but it's been a busy night, friends. So I've been on the phone trying to deal with, honestly, dealing with some death calls and moving through that. It's been an interesting evening. So busy, but it is what it is. Gather.app. Zach Chatterton over there. He's got a story as well as how this company started. So give them a call, 208-908-0488. Wilbert.com, guys, commemorating life with respect. Wilbert has a plethora of things they do between burial, cremation, memorialization. It goes far, no question about it. So they are a big name when it comes to burial vaults and things like that. Their website, they've got a beautiful vault on the front of that there. It looks like a veteran's vault, but it's got an entire, I don't know, like a picture montage on the top of it, the vault top. Absolutely beautiful. Dog tags, pictures, so a lot of detail. Wilbert.com. Guys, we have certified safety training. Mark Harrison over there keeps you compliant. If you're a veterinarian, keeps you compliant. A funeral home, cemetery, crematory, monument companies. We all know what these fines are with OSHA. We all know the trouble and the issues that we have to deal with at times when it comes to OSHA. Let Mark Harrison deal with it for you. CertifiedSafetyTraining.org. He can kind of put you where you need to be in compliance and go from there. That way you can kind of give the head nod to OSHA as they walk by. You don't want to smile at them, and don't look them in the eye. Don't ever look OSHA in the eye when they come in. It's crazy. So that's a joke, but nobody laughed. It is what it is. MatthewsAurora.com, friends. They have a plethora of things. Matthews Aurora Funeral Solutions, caskets. They do urns. They do all kinds of things when it comes to funeral memorializing. My goodness, I can't even talk. Memorializing your loved one. They've got grief resources, pre-planning, planning a funeral, all kinds of different stuff on their website. So MatthewsAurora.com. Nathan McCullough is over there, friend of the show, and we appreciate him. So MatthewsAurora.com. And our final sponsor, IndianaDonorNetwork.org, friends. I can't say enough good things about the Donor Network. We appreciate them. They've got a funeral director liaison that helps us kind of go back and forth and communicate with them and really work with them. I had a really good experience tonight working with them, trying to get someone released into my care, and they were very, very helpful. All you got to call and do is really just be nice, and they do all the work for you, especially if you're a funeral director. But we are supporters of donation, and I don't have to explain to you all. Yeah, I do, actually, because there's people that probably haven't heard this before. My father was a recipient. So it's important to me. Donation's important to me. It was important to our family. It gave my father 7 more months to be with us, to make those memories that mean so much now. So IndianaDonorNetwork.org. Friends, as always, rate, review, subscribe, tell a friend. Indiana UndertakingThePodcast.com is the website. Info at UndertakingThePodcast.com is the email. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Someone's at my door and it's late at night, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But rate, review, subscribe, and rock and roll.
So a week in advance, back to our bullcrap yet again. The Three Stooges are here yet again. It's myself, JB. Cole Towner has been kind enough to hop on for a second consecutive episode. Today is going to be a hodgepodge of a lot of Colts news and some NFL stuff sprinkled in there. So there's been a lot that's happened in the past week between coming off of the bye week and then we get into last week's practice and game prep and everything. And next thing I know, the linebacker formerly known as Darius Shaquille Leonard, former All-Pro, is gone. And nothing but a thank you. We appreciate your service. Good luck for the rest of your NFL career sort of ordeal. Jim Irsay decides to do an HBO interview. And that is a whole story in and of itself. Apparently, rich white billionaires can get what's the word I'm looking for? Targeted, if you will. But we're going to tread lightly there, guys. And then week of practice, nothing significant injury-wise, culminating up to a beautiful Colts win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 27-20 in Lucas Oil Stadium on a cold, rainy Sunday afternoon in the retractable roof dome. Cole and JB, welcome back, gentlemen. How we doing?
Good, man. It feels good coming off of another winning weekend.
Yeah, I'll echo that as well. Good, a lot of good, some bad, but mostly good. But I think we're all at the time of the season where you know what your team's good at, you know what you're not good at. You just kind of hope the defense of the other team doesn't figure it out.
That's accurate. Completely accurate. And I was at the Colts game yesterday, and we'll get to the game here in a little bit. So I just kind of want to progress through this past week of what transpired. We're going to start off with the release of Darius Shaquille Leonard, number 53, the three-time or four-time All-Pro linebacker drafted out of South Carolina State. We are going to be saving $55 million as an organization over the next 3 years with him no longer on the roster. And the only thing that we got to worry about is an $8 million dead cap hit next year. Guys, reactions, thoughts?
Yeah, when I went scorched earth on Shaq last episode, I did not think that was going to lead to his being cut by the Colts like 3 days later. But truthfully, I mean it was the right move, I think, for both parties. I think Shaq gets a fresh start. He can kind of choose his path now. I know he's reached out or spoke to at least a few teams. I think Jerry Jones made a call to him. I saw a couple other teams had some linebacker injuries. So there's opportunity for him to go maybe get more playing time elsewhere. It's unfortunate for him that it didn't work out here, but as we saw on Sunday, the Colts did a really cool tribute. He actually attended the game, cheered on his teammates. Thought that was really cool and really kind of big of him to do so. Just kind of shows you his character. One of the all-time great Colts defenders, really. I mean, he made his mark in just really 3 full seasons of just tearing it up in the NFL. The rest kind of hampered by injuries, unfortunately. But, credit to Chris Ballard for finding him as kind of a diamond in the rough. I think when they drafted him out of South Carolina State in what second or third round, I think it was like Mel Kiper or somebody just absolutely ripped Ballard to shreds and said he was terrible and all this stuff. And, flash forward a year later and he's like leading the NFL in tackles. So, shades of Bob Sanders, unfortunately, where just all the talent in the world and a really crucial defender that just unfortunately could not stay healthy and stay on the field. But, we'll always thank them for their contributions to the organization.
Yeah, agree with your assessment there, JB. No love lost to Darius. Time was up, man. I mean, he wasn't a scheme fit in this defense anymore. Obviously, injuries have kind of taken him from the Darius we know to the Shaquille that is today. Um, you know, you hate to look at the name change, but something with that timeline there just made sense. But um, yeah, wherever he ends up, probably Chicago. I know we kind of bid a little bit on where he'd land, but I don't think anyone's playing that full auction coming off of a claim. So we'll see where he heads in the waiver wire.
Yeah, and there's actually already 3 teams that are planning on speaking with him. I know the Cowboys are slated to host him this week. I don't know if it's tomorrow or if it's Thursday. It's one of the days of the week that begins with a T. And then the Buffalo Bills, who have had their injuries at linebacker, have interest, as well as the Philadelphia Eagles. So my assumption would be that Shaq's probably looking for a contender to go to, somebody that he can definitely get a good amount of playing time, because he was clearly phased out here. And the Patriots game was the sealing deal. I mean, that play's been talked about, where Zeke Elliott caught a swing pass and he just whiffed on the tackle. Between the Colts beat reporters and then some of the national media, and then I think we've talked about it too. His speed and explosiveness was not there, and it just looked like his technique had faded and regressed. So unfortunately, it was time to rip that Band-Aid off, and you wish him nothing but the best. And unfortunately, he does go in that book of what ifs for Indianapolis Colts history, going from Shaq to Andrew Luck to Bob Sanders, and lightly, if you will, Austin Collie, who has shown great promise as a slot receiver, but concussions took their toll. But again, wish him nothing but the best. But good news for the Colts is that saves us several millions of dollars, and Michael Pittman Jr. definitely is coming up for an extension and well deserves quite a bit of money, considering he's on pace for about 120 catches this year. But that leads us into something I mentioned in the intro. Good old Jim Irsay. He had an HBO special interview that got published out on HBO. For those who have that subscription, you can watch it. And I have not watched it yet, but there's quite a bit of backlash that's coming from it. And I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's kind of a crappy thing to really talk about. But Jim's just doing Jim things right now. I think he's in his own world, and he can be a good guy, sure, but I definitely think the script meds and alcohol may have taken their toll a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'll fully admit I did not watch it either, and now that I know that it's the backlash it's created, I have less interest in watching it, just because I feel like it's just going to make me feel awkward. But I mean, here's what I'll say, and this is kind of more of an indictment of these interviews that get set up where these Bryant Gumbel Real Sports, and I'm not necessarily defending Jim Irsay's comments, just from what I've heard from other famous people that have done those types of interviews. HBO does a 3-hour segment and then they chop together 15 minutes. So does Jim Irsay say a lot of stupid things? Yeah. Is it possible that some of what he said was not taken in the entire context? Probably. So I'm just going to wash my hands of that. It was pretty funny watching him just go scorched earth on every ESPN personality on Twitter in his own Jim Irsay, like, horribly grammared tweet rampage. So, whatever. It's one of those things. It's like, I hope it just catches its headline for a couple days and we just move on from it. I don't think it's something we need to keep talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks.
I think it falls under one of those things where there is going to be a side to each story. I do think when you look at it, it's almost 10 years ago. Why even bring it up? I think that's the fair question to Mr. Irsay, but there's sides to each story. There was a whole thing with him coming off the hip surgery. Plus, we don't know his state of the car. We were not there. We can't really decipher that and what's going on. I'm very torn. I mean, I've got family members in the Carmel Police Department, so that's also very just touchy, like I said. But to compare yourself in the current climate to the situation, not a good move, especially as an NFL owner. It was best to let that story let that simmer, let it marinate.
It was super tone deaf wording, but like, what else do we expect out of Jim at this point? And I think the whole point of the thing was like, if you go back and read what they were actually talking about, like he went on there to talk about mental health and kicking the stigma and like admitting that he had addiction problems. So like for everybody to focus in on this microcosm of one stupid thing that a 65-year-old man who's a former drug addict and alcoholic said, like, you put there's a famous Bill Burr skit where he was talking about Pat Robertson or whatever the Duck Dynasty guy is. He said something stupid one day. He's like, yeah, well, if you put a camera in the face of an 80-year-old, they're going to say something stupid from 50 years ago. So like, I don't know what people were expecting. And when you hone in on one small clip of an entire conversation, I mean, it was definitely stupid what he said and pretty tone deaf, but yeah, I don't think it's an indictment of him as a person.
My last thing I would say about it is, you look at the situation, what you're there to talk about, and just the way he's always carried himself. I mean, we're talking about a guy who just can't help himself from being the center of attention. There's a reason this guy has the Ursay collection and goes city to city and basically says, "Behold my stuff." And just, shows it off to everybody. He just likes being the center of attention, and anything that he can do to be that center of attention, he's going to take that move. So, it's kind of like your uncle at Thanksgiving or that one family member, every Thanksgiving that has to say the one thing that's going to get everybody stirred up. That's Jim.
Yeah. And I think we're probably a little bit, impartial or partial to him, because we live here. We live in Indianapolis. We see everything that he does for the community around here and all the people that he helps and goes out of his way to do things for. So I think the national audience doesn't necessarily see that side of Jim. They just see the psychotic tweeting, former drug addict owner that's kind of loopy. Like they don't see all the good things that the Ursay family does. And so I think from my perspective, it's like, it's hard for me to just chastise him for something stupid that he said.
Absolutely 100% agree. I mean, we see it all the time. Jim Irsay will literally go to a corner street in Indianapolis or to the gate at a Colts game and just hand people $100 bills. He's done it at training camp every year for like the past 4-6 years or however long it's been. The dude just rides around in his golf cart with stacks of $100 bills.
To Cole's point, though, he does autograph the $100.
I don't think. Yeah, I was gonna say, does that? Hey, are they still able to be used at that
not
point?
A bad
because they're defaced technically.
Not a bad guy. He just has to be the center.
Absolutely has to be. Absolutely has to be. But on the topic of owners, as loopy as Jim Irsay can be, he's not an angry psychopath like David Tepper out of Carolina. Who has fired yet another head coach, and I think like 2 or 3 assistant coaches also got the beat down today and lost their jobs. Frank Reich ousted at Carolina. I feel bad for Frank, but at the same time, yeah, he may have wanted C.J. Stroud and David Tepper may have forced his hand, but my Lord, man, clearly he didn't change his offensive philosophy. Now, granted, Carolina did not help him whatsoever by trading their only deep threat wide receiver and a bunch of picks just to get the chance to go draft Bryce Young, who's clearly, in my eyes, not that special of a talent in the NFL. Definitely the benefactor of playing at Alabama. But I think, Frank Reich, yes, he got the crap end of the stick, but at the same time, there was no adaptation for his offense. It was great when the first couple of years he was in the league with Andrew Luck and Phillip Rivers, but it didn't change. It was stale, and ultimately the writing was on the wall several weeks ago, when the Colts beat down the Panthers. Clearly the writing was on the wall and nothing improved then. And now Frank Reich's without a job, and He's actually stated today that he is most likely going to retire from anything NFL. So, yeah, that's all I got to say about that. I mean,
I think multiple things can be true here. I think Frank got an absolutely raw deal in Carolina, but I also think Frank is just not that good of a head coach. I think he's one of those people that you find that is an extremely effective quarterback coach and a very good offensive mind, but he wasn't able to put it together from a head coaching perspective. And you have to be you almost have to take a step back from being so involved in the X's and O's, and you have to be a CEO of the team, basically. And I just don't think that Frank really mastered an ability to effectively do that. And I I feel bad for him because it is clear that Carolina owner is a wacko. I mean, just coming out of they've had problems since week one. I mean, we're not even through a full season, and they've already had spats in the media and all kinds of stuff. So just not a good situation for him. But unfortunately, I also just think that Frank maybe didn't have the chops to be a high level head coach in the NFL. So not entirely surprised that this happened. I'm very surprised it happened mid-season year one. I'm not surprised it didn't work out in Carolina. And, I think as much as Frank Reich, I think Tepper might be a little bit upset with himself for what they've done. Because to your point, Blake, they've given up their first round pick next year, the Bears. They've really put themselves in a bad spot with a quarterback that doesn't seem to be adapting the way that the rest of the rookie class has at that position. So I don't know what direction they go in, but clearly he thinks that bringing in a different quarterback mind is going to solve all their problems with Bryce Young. But yeah, I don't know if it's going to work out that way for him.
No, I mean, not to go in. If you're a Panthers fan, you might just want to head away for a few minutes because, man, you look at the whole team and everything going on there. Ever since the beginning of the season was just bad. I think getting rid of Frank Reich's a good call. He runs a stale offense. He has no capability of bringing an RPO into his offense. It's boring football. It's boring offense. You look at Bryce Young, the guy hasn't even flashed great talent. I mean, he's flashed accuracy. He's very accurate. I'll give him that. But he doesn't have the arm. He doesn't seem to have the want to run the ball. And then you look at the depth on that Panthers team, and they're just awful. I mean, I don't think I even know who Mingo is on 25 other teams in the league. So you've got a roster that's just not up to par. And I think the biggest loser of all is Adam Thielen. I mean, you're rounding up your career and you're very close to retirement. Are you going to finish off in Carolina? I would hope not. Prayers up for the Panthers, man, because it looks like downhill sledding. I would probably get your name in the hat for Caleb Williams if you can.
Well, I thought it was pretty comical when I look and see, you guys I think had texted me, and I didn't see this initially. So I was catching up a couple hours later, and by the time I was really looking at it, they had not only fired Reich, but then like their interim coach had fired Deuce Staley and somebody else, and they were just whacking people left and right. And then whose name do I see pop up down there of like somebody in charge of this whole operation? Jim Caldwell. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really the direction you need to go in. Good luck with that. I would think maybe at the end of the year, let's go with a fresh start.
There needs to be some serious house cleaning. And by house cleaning, I'm not just talking about football operations. Like, they're not going to do anything with a psychopath owner. Like, hands down, he can have all the millions of dollars in the world. But if you don't let your football staff do football things, then you're going nowhere very quickly. Now, I mean, in terms of like having a bunch of money and using it wisely, that wisely can be loose. You go to the baseball and you look at Steve Cohen and the Mets. He's investing millions and millions of dollars into the organization as a whole. But he's allowing his GM, his baseball development staff, and he's letting everybody, do their own thing. Now his focus is building like a Mets super sports complex with like a hotel and parks and just a good place to hang out and not just watch a baseball game. He's focused on the business side of it, which is what I think an owner should, with, just an eye off to the side watching football. And I think that's where Jim Irsay, he did overstep a lot.
I would say though, Blake, I would push back there a little bit because it's a lot easier to do that in baseball. Though you can't be a lunatic hedge fund billionaire in the NFL and just take over everything. And I mean, to your point, it's much easier for Steve Cohen to do it, but also because there's no salary cap and he can just do whatever he wants and pay to get whatever player and pay the luxury tax. I think it's a lot harder to manage that in the NFL. And from what I read about this guy, because I didn't even know who he was until today, he's like a $30 billion net worth hedge fund guy. And you can tell he's just never been told no in his life. So it's like, as much as everybody hates on Jerry Jones, you can at least give him a little bit of credit because he knows football. This guy clearly has no clue what he's doing. And he just thinks that I'm going to fire my way into success. I mean, I
was starting to get there next because I actually found something earlier today that said that like he came in and he did like a bunch of questions and surveys and just went through a bunch of different types of reports and analytics and stuff. And it was basically shown to him like, yeah, you can do all the analytics and all the, studying and everything that you want, but success is not going to come overnight in the NFL. It's not going to come overnight no matter what you do, no matter how much money you throw at it. Back to the Steve Cohen reference, he put millions of dollars into his baseball team and the Mets missed the playoffs. Clearly success doesn't come over by buying everything, or does it come overnight, which is what David Tepper expects. And just because you have this number one overall pick and you blow it on a 5'10" quarterback and, you think you hire an offensive coach doesn't mean it's going to mesh well. And as Cole said, like the roster is dog crap. So the talent is extremely lacking. And now since they don't have a 2024 first round pick, and I think they even gave up second round picks as well, like you're not going to start picking till the middle of the rounds. By that time, the elite talent is gone. Then you're just looking for diamonds in the rough and guys to fill your depth chart. And that's not what they need right now as an organization. They need talent. They need great coaching. They need everything to be perfect to even start sniffing 500. So if David Tepper wants success, like he's going to have to invest 3-5 years in something.
I don't know what their books look like in terms of salary, but that's the only way they're going to be able to fill gaps is if they can cut some older guys. Like I don't know how much Thielen's making if they got him on a cheap deal, but some of those guys that they've had, I know there's a dude, I can't remember what his name is, but one of their linebackers has been there forever. And I know they were already talking about maybe trying to cut his salary and let him go somewhere else because I think it was Burns. Yeah, it was. And I just don't see when you don't have that draft capital, I mean, you just have to reset money wise and build up salary cap to be able to go spend on, filling these gaps. Cause I think they not only extended their rebuild by a couple of years, they probably extended their rebuild by 5 or 6 years because I mean, the way that they screwed themselves with these draft picks was so stupid.
Well, not just the draft picks, the acquisitions too have been. I mean, Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders was a massive flop. I mean, and who trades that kind of capital for I think it was a free agency sign. It wasn't Miles Sanders was a free agency signing, I'm fairly certain.
He was.
But you look at the cap that you tied up in some of these guys, and it's just like, man, how much did you spend for this team? Like, it's just a horrible team.
Yeah, that's
definitely rivals the worst.
That's definitely a job that I would be avoiding. And Ben Johnson was their number one target last offseason to be their head coach, and he had wanted nothing to do with it, mainly because of David Tepper.
Yeah, they'll probably end up getting like Eric Bieniemy or something, who has interviewed for like 47 head coaching vacancies and not gotten any of them. So that'll probably be their next guy who,
You're a hot temper. That's not going to go well.
Yeah. No kidding. But I'm just saying that the top candidates are not going to be looking at that as I just heard Adam Schefter say today on Pat McAfee's show that he expects there to be 7 to 10 job openings. So if you're the Panthers, you're at the bottom of the totem pole of those 7 to 10 openings. So you're already getting, what's probably going to be the like third, either a retread who's had no success somewhere else, or the 10th option for whatever openings show up, like the Chargers or any of those other ones.
Well, Jack Del Rio just got let go from the Commanders.
Yeah. Speaking of retreads.
Yeah, that'd be my instant fill in. Or there's a guy. I don't know if you guys ever heard of Jeff Saturday.
There you go. Or the Panthers could go the Pat Shurmur route, who was named the interim offensive coordinator at Colorado Buffaloes for Prime this year, and they proceeded to go from scoring 40 points a game to like 16 points a game. So yeah, they could go that route.
Colorado's had like 3 5-star recruits decommit from them in the last 24 hours.
I have no idea what Prime was doing and why he took, because that other offensive coordinator was doing good. I don't think he was using. Prime's got this tricky situation where he's got his kid playing quarterback and he wants to be dad and coach, and I don't think that's working very well. Anyways, sorry, we've gone off the rails here.
No thoughts on Prime from me.
Yeah, because that could tailor into Jim Harbaugh, and I have no desire to go down that route today. Anywho's, so let's spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about Colts, because there was a game Sunday that we won, and we are now a game above 500. We are currently slotted as the 7th seed in the AFC wildcard race. Playoffs started today. We would be headed to Kansas City to play the Chiefs, as Cole nicely said last week. But yeah, we have a very favorable schedule coming up. We predicted that this game would be a win, I believe. I was at this game, like I stated earlier at the beginning of the show, and I'll just start off with this. The national anthem with the bald eagle was fantastic. For those of you who are unaware, it was the salute to service honoring game, and the Colts had a 8-year-old bald eagle named Indy fly down at the end of the national anthem when the big American flag, as big as the field, was waving, and it was just a really cool sight to behold. But yeah, overall thoughts on the game. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I was thrilled, man. I got to be honest. I think this is probably the most complete game the Colts have played since the Texans game earlier this year, and that was obviously with a lot of question marks with Richardson and things like that. But I think enough time has passed so far this season. It helps playing the Panthers and New England back to back and getting. I mean, the New England game ended up being closer than it should have been, but still relatively two pretty horrible teams that you could get an easy win off of. I think couple that with coming off of a bye, I thought it was the most collective effort from both the offense and defense that we've seen since the Texans game, really, because it seemed like both sides, for the most part, were clicking, which I feel like other games this season, especially the last 5 or 6, we've either seen really strong play from one side or the other. There's really been no consistency on both sides. Obviously, Minshew had that like stretch of 2 series where he was seeing ghosts there for a little bit, but he figured it out, was much better towards the end of the second half. JT's really starting to find his groove on the ground. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I thought it was a great collective effort. The defensive line, and especially Ebukam and Dio, played really well. So I was very happy with what I saw. And obviously, they sort of let the Buccaneers creep back in towards the end, but really I never had that pit of, feeling in my stomach like we were going to blow it like I do most games these days. So I felt like we were pretty much in control of that game the entire way. So I was very happy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to be happy about. Like you said, Ebukam, Tyquan Lewis, not as much Kwity Paye, but those two were getting it done, especially on a defensive line where we're missing Grover Stewart, and that hurts. So we're leaning on our ends a little bit more to get the job done without that upfront pressure. Minshew still had an interception, but one thing that did change that you haven't really seen earlier this year is just those sub 3 second pockets where he drops back and delivers dimes to Pittman, to Downs. They get the short, capable yards. They don't overthink it, where it seems like you can almost call out a few games this season where Minshew just looked to be trying to get too much done on a single play. He's going, he's progressing to like his fourth look when the first guy was open. Like, man, take the 3 yards. Take the 3 to 4 yards plus if it's going to Pittman, the way he's been running the ball once he's been tucking it, I mean, the guy's huge. He's going to get a few extra yards. And now that we've got Taylor and Moss in the backfield, I mean, we might have the best, most underrated backfield in the league. I think definitely the best. I don't know who else even really can. I don't know a single other backfield in the league as good as ours in terms of power backs anyway. So a lot of stuff to like. The secondary gave up a little more yards than you'd like to see to the Baker Mayfield ran Bucks offense. But hey, overall, a win's a win. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, to your point, Cole, I was really impressed with Shane's game plan. It was kind of funny to see because, like, we've obviously seen, like, the Patriots game was really run heavy. And then we come into this game out of the bye, and it's like, I think the first, like, 9 plays or something were passing plays. But then after the game, I was looking through some of the beat writers were talking about, and they pointed out that, obviously the Buccaneers secondary, I think, was like one of the bottom 5 worst or something at covering passes down the field. So it's like Shane obviously did his homework, and the game plan was very sound. We got looks from, Will Mallory had a few really good catches and, down the field, and Pierce. I mean, pretty much everybody in the receiving core made a contribution, even Mo Alley Cox with that awesome 4th down play. So I was very impressed with the play calling, especially.
Yeah, and being at the game, I was able to actually see the entirety of the field and the entirety of what was happening as it was happening. And it was very refreshing to see because then I did go back last night and I rewatched some of the game and and pretty much most of the highlights and lowlights, if you will, on my phone and just kind of compare and contrast versus what I saw. And Gardner Minshew, starting off there, those 2-3 drives that he had in the middle of the game were very, very schizophrenic, like you like to say, JB. And I definitely was able to see, watching it live, those couple drives he was locking in on his first read instantly and just following it with his eyes, and that was just easy. He should have had 3 interceptions in this game. Alec Pierce broke one up nicely and saved Minshew, and then there was another one that was dropped. So there easily could have been 3, 4 maybe interceptions there. And with coming out so aggressively with the pass, that opened up the run game, and Tampa Bay has, I think, they had like the 2nd or the 3rd best rush defense in the entire league up to this game. But we gashed them for 155 yards, almost 6 yards a carry, which is beautiful. And I agree with Cole. I think we have the best backfield in the NFL with a healthy Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss, which you can really tell that they feed off of each other and they complement each other, even though they're fairly similar backs. Whereas, in years past, Jonathan Taylor has been carrying 90-95% of the workload, and both backs just look fresh constantly now. And the bye week, I personally think, did this team well because all of our sacks that we had like 5 or 6 sacks this game. The defensive line was getting after it. They looked refreshed. They were fast. They were explosive off the line of scrimmage. And then
Offensive line.
With Ryan Kelly out, Wesley, we had the French fries combo again at center and guard.
Well, but I mean, when's the last time we saw a healthy Quentin Nelson? He was pulling all like crazy over there with JT. Yep. I mean, that play that I think it was 3rd down or something when we were trying to salt the game away, and he pulled out there, and I mean, he had a fantastic block for JT to get the 1st down. So I think getting our offensive line healthy, especially even though we didn't have Kelly, I thought they looked great.
I'm already just going to say this right now. My player of the game is not Pittman or JT. It's Wesley French because he held nose tackle Vita Vea in his zone. He did not let Vea disrupt the game as he has been known to do in years past. And for being a backup center who's relatively undersized for an O lineman in the NFL, for him to hold his own against a 350-pound nose tackle, it was elite in my eyes.
Yeah, I'm extremely impressed with the job that Tony Sperano Jr. has done with. Again, we look back at this, it's like it's the same guys that were successful 3 years ago, and then they just had 2 abysmal years, which just tells you that it comes down to scheme, game planning, and having a coach that knows how to motivate that unit and put them in the best position to succeed. So I think the ability that he's had to extract more consistency out of this line, especially when we've had injuries after injuries. So we're plugging guys in left and right at different positions. I think I thought it was really cool that package that they brought in. Obviously, they passed it to Mo Alley Cox, but like having Freeland in there as like an extra blocker,
Zaire
and then
Franklin at fullback.
Zaire Franklin at fullback. Like that's something that is we're going to see again at some point, and they're going to run the ball.
They just installed that formation this past week.
And I love it, man. That's what you get when you have a true creative offensive mind. Like you can have a good offensive coach that really knows what his thing is, and he just sticks to it in his cadence. And that's what Frank Reich is. Like he's a solid offensive coach, but he never had any creativity. And when things weren't going right, he didn't know how to adapt. You have Steichen who's out there cooking up stuff left and right, new plays, new formations, new things to do. It's so refreshing to have that. And I think we're really starting to see – I mean, it makes you kind of look back on the first few games of the season and be like, damn it, I wish we still had AR, like to see what we could be doing with him. But the fact that we're able to get this kind of offense out of Minshew is unbelievable.
Something else to point out, and I'm leaning towards the negative here. We're seeing a lot of things go right. What is going wrong? One thing I don't think Steichen has really paid much attention to is our time of possession. Colts are sub 30 minutes on time of possession per game. We're sitting at about 28 minutes. So not the worst, not the best, but you look at the top 10 teams in the league, all of them are going to be up there in time of possession. And you look at this backfield and you kind of wonder, how are the Colts not positive 30 on time of possession with Jonathan Taylor and Zach Moss? Are we scoring too quick? Like, how does that happen? It just doesn't equate to me.
Well, I think too, this goes back to Shane's 4 pillars and what his mindset is as a head coach. And I think back to his opening presser, and this one sentence that he said is that the question was, what kind of a head coach and what's your philosophy on offense? And straight verbatim answers, we're going to throw to score points and we're going to run to win. And this game clearly was that sentence to a T. Gardner Minshew dropped back 43 times, and he was sacked twice, was 24-41 in passing, and we ran the ball 27 times. So that's a 2-to-1 ratio almost. And it's like, all right, well, we didn't have – funny thing is we didn't have any passing touchdowns. All 3 of our touchdowns we scored were on the ground. And
including the most mobile of them all, Gardner Minshew, baby.
He hit that shimmy, though. That shimmy was there was some good –
that goes down as the worst juke I've seen all year.
But the fact that it was Devin White that overran it is absolutely hilarious. Former first-round pick out of Michigan just gets absolutely juked out of his shoes by Gardner Minshew II.
Watch out for that Gardner Minshew. He's going to get your ankles.
He's run for like 3 touchdowns now, right?
It's something like that.
What I will say in regards to the time of possession, I guess for me, the only game that we haven't scored more than 20 points in was the New England game, and that was basically a ground fest the entire way. So the way I look at it is like, obviously we're 6-5, so there's room for improvement, right? But if we're scoring and we're scoring more than 20 points a game, like in the NFL, if you're doing that consistently, that puts you in a position to win. You have to rely on your defense to be able to hold teams. So the way I look at it with the possession, like I don't disagree. I would like to see, once we get that lead when we're up 20-10, maybe run the ball more. I think we had a 3 and out in there that really like put us in a bad spot with a pretty subpar punt by Rigo. So I get it from that perspective. But I guess the way I look at it is like if we're scoring the points and we're winning, like whatever. But to your point, Cole, it is something to keep an eye on, especially down the road, because like I said last time we recorded, like I think they officially said it was like we have the easiest schedule the rest of the way. So like there's no reason we should not be winning some of these games.
Well, and going back to time of possession, you look at who we have played. Like I know we're shaking in our knees, over giving the time of possession bump to Baker Mayfield or Will Levis, Ryan Tannehill. Like you look at who we've played, it's not been a threat. You go up against a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, a Lamar Jackson. I mean, yes, we did take on Lamar Jackson, but we got lucky. But you go up against a top quarterback in the league. You've got to have time of possession. I don't think I've ever seen Mahomes so shook as when he's down 3 points, 7 points to one score game, but the other team just ran 8 minutes off the clock in the third. The second they came out onto the field. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that throws the prime guys off. They're like, we can't even get the freaking ball. So I think that's how you got to win against the real guys in the league, the best quarterbacks and the best.
I will say this though, compared to that. So I'm looking back at the time of possession for the Indy Baltimore game where we won in overtime. The Colts had over 36 and a half minutes time of possession compared to Baltimore's 32.
So we actually won that game on time of possession. I know there was overtime too, which but
we have the ability. It's just I think it's a matter of who we have been playing because we haven't been playing the most top tier of competition. Now we're going to Nashville next weekend, and Tennessee always plays us hard. But after that, I mean, the Bengals are no longer a big factor without Joe Burrow. And then after that, it's the Steelers, Falcons, Raiders, Texans. And the Texans might be the toughest team on the schedule remaining.
Yeah. The Steelers are going to be that. Their Steelers are going to be a game where the time of possession will be critical because, they're going to salt the clock away as much as they can because their offense is horrible.
Well, they put up 400 yards of offense this past weekend with their new play caller.
Yeah.
Pat Freiermuth went for 130 yards.
The Bengals are a shell of themselves. I'm not. We'll see how they do against some real defenses, but I don't know. I mean, Matt Canada could not have been that bad.
The Steelers are the best defense that we have left on the schedule.
Right. So that's my point. To Cole's point, I think that's going to be a game where time of possession will be critical. Mm-hmm. I think in this particular game, it seemed like Shane had a plan. He didn't think that the Buccaneers could stop, and so he was just going to keep throwing until they made him stop. You know what I mean? And then in the second half, we found a groove with the running game because we had passed so much in the first half. So granted, there was some shaky moments in there with Gardner, and like you said, he staring down receivers and, I don't know what was going on those two drives. He just froze up or something, but we got through it and it worked.
And for Minshew, it's just like, man, just stand in there and do what comes easiest. If it's a 3-yard, dump up the field, get it. If it's handing the ball off, go get it. But as long as he knows that he's probably the least athletic guy on that field, I mean, I think we're in a good spot. And sometimes I feel like he forgets that he is the least athletic guy on that field. Like every other person on this field is going to do a lot more for this team in terms of skill set and being able to gain yardage than you, Mr. Minshew. No hate. Love the hair, but love to see the ball in someone else's hands.
Right. And to his credit, what I will say, I think what I was kind of alluding to earlier with us finding a groove on offense especially, I think he's starting to get more comfortable. I mean, obviously he came in and provided, pretty good play when AR went down in those games where he was kind of getting thrown into the fire. But I think he's starting to find a groove because, like, I feel like the last 2 games especially, I've noticed he seems to be stepping up in the pocket more and rolling out and things like that. Like, he's not just standing in there getting murdered like he did against Jacksonville 5 or 6 weeks ago. So I think he's starting to get more comfortable with our line, how much time he has. You know what I mean? And that's the kind of stuff that you just build in practice. And when you're not getting the QB1 reps like he at the beginning of the season and training camp, I mean, you just can't build that type of repetition and mental stamina. So I think obviously we know he's not a long-term solution here, but I mean, with this schedule, I'm telling you guys, I really think this might be a playoff team.
I mean, I'm starting to believe it too. And as awesome as it is, and kind of unfortunate at the same time, I'm very much prepared to lose Minshew after the season. So there goes the best backup in the league. Because, I mean, he does deserve a shot somewhere. I mean, he's a gamer. He'll do whatever it takes to win a football game, whether he's the least athletic guy or not. Like, he's going to play as hard as he can for 60 minutes and then some. But one last offensive voice crack there, LOL. One last note I wanted to make that I saw live was the change in how Steichen and crew was using, brace yourselves, Alec Pierce. I think we had mentioned last podcast, or maybe even the one prior to that, JB, that Pierce's average yards ran per route was the most in the NFL at like 16 or 18 yards or whatever. On several of these RPOs, play actions, and standard drop back passes that I was seeing, they were starting to incorporate Pierce a lot more in the crossing patterns and underneath routes, which me personally, having been now watched Pierce for almost 2 full seasons, with him not having the ability to beat a man one-on-one vertically, send him across the field with his speed and see what he can do. I mean, clearly he's a bigger receiver because I think he's like 6'2", 6'3", a little bit shorter than Pittman. He's not afraid of contact because we see him block like A+ blocking in the run game. But now that if they're going to start sending him across the field more, could we be phasing into a part where he becomes consistently more involved in the offense, or was this an outlier? That remains to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed that as well. And he had, I think it was 6 targets, 4 catches on 6 targets. So I mean, that's a dramatic improvement from where he was at. So like you said, maybe they're realizing his game is not to send him down on a streak down the side of the, outside the numbers. I think he shows his value too in blocking. So I think they're finding what he's good at, which clearly shows that Shane is adapting, what the status quo was from last year and what they knew, for Alec Pierce, obviously last year, there was not a lot of focus on his play, I guess. I mean, Matt Ryan couldn't even get him the ball. So I think he had like 1 touchdown, that crazy play that Matt Ryan threw in the end zone. But I don't know. I definitely agree with you, Blake. I'm seeing the change as well. Really, even a couple weeks ago, I mean, I just noticed that they are running him on different routes. And it seems like whenever I see JT running past the sticks or something like that, you see Pierce right there making a block. So it's like they're intentionally putting him in the spot to be blocking down the field for JT. And so, I mean, if that's how he can be effective, at least for the rest of this year, then I'm all for it.
Well, move over 3rd and Renfro. Indy's here with 3rd and Pierce. The short routes running right up on the stick. I mean, if the man can make a career out of it, go for it. I mean, if you can get separation at the first down point, that's probably going to be his best path to a long-term career with the Indianapolis Colts. We saw through last year him trying to run playmaking routes, different posts, stop and goes. It just he doesn't have the one. He doesn't have the acceleration. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the moves. And honestly, for what he was and where we got him, we we kind of are on the shorter end of the stick here with a round 2 pick in terms of just overall talent. But if he's not going to be as talented, he's got to be smarter, and we got to use him smarter and try to use him in situational football. He's also a great blocker. You can't take that away from him. I mean, you look at, of course, Zach Pascal is going to be the first one I reach to, who's just made a career off of good blocking and bad hands. So that's, luckily Alec Pierce has hands. So if he can be that third down guy, possession guy that's going to get us first downs and throw a block here and there, maybe he does have a long-standing chance with the Colts. But you never know. And of course, we can't pay guys like that. Not tons of money anyway.
No.
So.
Well, I think the best thing that's happened to Pierce too is the emergence of Josh Downs. You know what I mean? I mean, it's clear by not only by what we see on the field, but also in the box score. You know, Pittman and Downs are 1 and 2. You know what I mean? And I think that in an inadvertent way has kind of freed up Pierce because, like we've said all season, he's not capable of being a wide receiver too. And now he's able to slide into more of that niche role where you can call on him. He's got pretty good hands. You can call on him to get a short for a third down or something like that. So I think we're seeing an evolution of the offense, but also because of Downs' emergence as a threat down the field.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
I also too, I'm beginning to notice less and less of tight end usage, and that could be because we're still A, without Jelani Woods, and B, Drew Ogletree missed this last game. So we were limited to Mo Alley Cox and Will Mallory and Kylan Granson, at which Granson only saw 1 target, which was wild. Okay, Poltergeist 2.0 noted. But yeah, I mean, Granson only had 1 target. He really wasn't even looked at all during the game. Whereas
I was going to say one target, he almost didn't make the field.
Yeah, I honestly think he did. I don't even think he played 10 snaps. I did not see 83 on the field much.
I couldn't believe he was losing snaps to Mallory. No shots at Mallory.
I mean, Mallory looked good though.
I know. I was going to say, I think every time I've seen Mallory, he's looked good. And
Mallory's name was cursed by every man imaginable on the sports books this weekend. They go, who the is Will Mallory?
Yeah. I mean, the times that he's come in, he's been effective. And I think, frankly, to me, he almost looks like he's bigger and faster than Granson. So I still stand by. I think we might see the end of both Cox and Granson after this season because I think we have 3 really good young tight ends. Obviously, if Jelani ever comes back from injury.
Which he had a setback. He injured his other hamstring in rehab. So there's that.
Ooh.
Yeah, less than ideal. So the fact that we are possibly not going to see Jelani this season is increasing. Less than ideal, but hey, I will take the tight ends we have over, I'd say, 20 other teams in the league, honestly.
Well, it's nice to have 4 deep.
That's valid. All young, too. And because Mo Alley Cox isn't even 20. He's our age. Is he 30? Hey, did you know he played basketball at VCU?
I think we just got to slip it into every episode.
Yeah, almost. Defensively, I don't have much to say defensively in terms of a really positive or negative. I was very happy with the way the D-line played. All of our sacks, maybe 1 sack came via blitz, but everything else was 4-man rush. There was 1 sack we had that was a pure 3-man rush that we just 3 beat 5. And I was myself and my uncle, Brian, the owner of Undertaking the podcast, he was sitting next to me and he was just like, did our 3 defensive linemen just beat 5 O linemen and a running back to the quarterback? I was like, yeah, that actually happened.
Well, so my favorite was, and maybe it was the same play you're talking about, I can't remember, but my favorite was when Samson Ebukam just absolutely bull rushed like 6'8", 320-pound Tristan Wirfs and just put him right into the quarterback. And I mean, he made a great play and got a sack in the backfield. But I was very impressed with how our edges were playing there. And we only have 1 more week of no Grover before we can kind of get him back and help lock back up that. I mean, I think Eric Johnson and Taven Bryan have done a good job, but obviously having Grover back makes a huge difference.
Grover's
so
a big changer.
they've done a pretty good job. Yeah, they've done a pretty good job with it in his absence.
Quiddy Pay is slow.
Yeah, Quiddy Pay is.
I'm just going to put that out.
He did look slow in the game. He had a sack that was a coverage sack all the way.
I think we're trying to like hype up Quiddy Pay to trade him on this podcast. So we need to sell him very highly every week because, man, I do not like what I see. Like, he doesn't have the speed. He doesn't stay with carriers. I mean, guys get around Quiddy way too often. That's my concern. Around the edge.
I think he's a tweener. Like, and I told Blake this on an episode that we recorded earlier. It might have been before the season or right after the first game or something. I feel like in the past he was bigger and he came in this year more slimmed down. But I don't know that it's made any difference.
No, because his speed has an increase, and with his loss of size, that usually means a little bit loss of strength in favor of trying to get speed and agility. And last year, when his rookie season, he was getting sacks just purely bull rushing right tackles. Now, granted, a lot of the right tackles that he got sacks on, there was a couple of them that were pretty decent NFL right tackles, but for the most part, his sacks are coming as cover sacks or below average right tackles. And again, it's the right tackle. He's not going up against your elite left tackles. Like, I mean, I wouldn't call Tristan Wirfs like elite, but he's an upper echelon left tackle in the NFL.
That or we're blitzing off his end. And the tackle's not even that concerned about him, thinking the guard's going to pick it up, and it's a mismatch. And if the guard had picked it up, Quiddy probably still wouldn't have gotten to the quarterback. I think he's a good bull rusher into a sense, but I don't see him being a very successful left, end. I don't see him being a great. I'm sorry, right end. I don't see him being a great right end.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
Left goes against right tackle and vice versa.
Well, I think a guy that I ripped on the first 3 games of the season. What I've noticed is Dio Adengbo, most of the plays where Samson Ebukam's getting a sack, Dio Adengbo's the one going off the left.
Yeah.
So
Dio's starting to see Quiddy's playing time.
Yeah, that's not a good sign for Quiddy. If like every time we're making a play in the backfield, I mean, credit to him because Dio, to the reverse, I think has, from what I remember seeing him when he came out of Vanderbilt, I think he's gotten bigger and he's just stronger off the edge and he's making the right tackle life hell while Samson's rushing in there off the edge. So those two seem to be a lot more effective than what Quiddy's been able to put together with Samson on.
Dio's beginning to show me. Now this is a very loose comparison, so don't. Yeah, well, I was going to say don't come after me, but please all do because we need more debate on this show. But Dio is really here in his second year starting to show me signs of Dwight Freeney a little bit.
He's just getting his moves down. And, not to continue to pick on Quiddy, but that's, he loses this weight and comes back after the off season. New slim Quiddy, same crappy outer moves. So, the weight loss doesn't really do you much. You're a bull rusher through and through. I'd like to see you take the offseason, go put 60 pounds on and play D tackle. So just looking at the roster here, he is right in between. So Samson Ebukam is 6'3", 245.
That's very Robert Mathis-esque.
And then Dio Adengbo's 6'6", 286. And I don't know how – I'm not even going to try to say his name, but the rookie Adebawore out of Northwestern, who I think has played well the last few weeks as well. He's 6'2", 282. And then you've got Quiddy, who's 6'3", 265. So he's kind of like right in between those two of like – he's not small enough to be as effective as a pure speed rusher like Samson Ebukam, and he's not big enough, to be as effective as the guys on the left edge that are just bull rushing. So I just don't. I don't know. I agree, Cole. I don't know where the fit is long term.
I think he puts weight on. I think he should put weight on, and take a shot at D tackle. I think he could really succeed there if he just gets the right frame.
If Quiddy
he's one.
If Quiddy sniffs 275, 280, then it's definitely a little bit different story.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, he'll be fast. He'll be the fastest D tackle in the league with the power and momentum he's always had. But that's the thing. He'll be the fastest. He'll be the fastest defensive tackle and the slowest defensive tackle.
That's the thing. I don't see his explosiveness. I did not see it yesterday. He does not look. Now, he could be dealing with some sort of underlying ailment that's not good, big enough to be on the injury report, but he is not exploding off the line of scrimmage like Dio is, or Defoe, or Ebukam, at all.
Well, you wonder if he's hindered by his lateral quickness. Like he may be asked to take a different rush path to the quarterback just out of threat the quarterback's going to get around him. Especially if he's being held to an end. If he's actually supposed to anchor that end, we're in a rough spot because he's not fast enough to do it. Mm-hmm. So that might be another thing kind of affecting how often you get
Dio
shot.
At 6'6", 285 is exploding off of the ball and is getting to that edge.
Yeah, Dio, I just was looking at it. Dio actually leads the team with 6.5 sacks. That's kind of surprising me. I would have thought Ebukam. I hadn't looked at that.
Somebody needs – actually, I want to check on and see how many passes DeForest Buckner has swatted this year because he smacked, I think, 3 of them yesterday. Now, granted, Baker has a tendency to throwing into the back of people's heads, mainly at the left or right guard, respectively. But, Defoe I saw swatted, I think, 2 or 3 passes yesterday, and I was like,
I think EJ had a couple too, or at least one. And that, just seeing yesterday, not to harp on the Shaq thing again, but a full game of EJ out there. I mean, it was just very clear why we had
in a good way. Now, also back to Shaq again, real quick. He was at the game too, and there was a very loud standing ovation and tribute video for him at the game, which was well deserved given his contributions when he was Darius Leonard. But that's besides the point. Yeah, no, the defense definitely felt a lot more smooth. And Ronnie Harrison, the converted safety, getting the interception as he is the replacement on the 53-man roster for Leonard, which is just poetic beauty at its finest.
I even texted you guys, and I'm like, who the hell is this? But if he can play like that the rest of the season – I mean, I'm happy running out there with him, and then if we get Stewart back, I think he might have been out this week with an injury, or maybe did he play? So, I know he was injured earlier in the week, so I don't know.
He had flu.
What? Okay. Well, I like him too. I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen. He's been in on a few plays on defense, but primarily special teams. But he hustles. I can live with those guys. I think just to touch on what I didn't like is. I texted you about this earlier today, Blake. I think we need to start seeking some help, especially just short term for if we're going to try to make the playoffs. Seek some help at the cornerback position in terms of depth piece, or I saw Marcus Peters popped up on the waiver wire today, and I know he hasn't had a great year for the Raiders, but that's a guy with veteran experience, really successful when he played for the Chiefs and the Rams. And I think if we saw anything yesterday, Jalen Jones and Tony Brown continue to struggle.
It was Darryl Baker at the second corner.
Was it Baker? I mean, any combination of them, they've struggled. I mean, how do you leave Mike Evans wide open?
A lot of it. Here's where I will defend both Baker and Jones in this after seeing them yesterday. When they were left one-on-one and not doing that BS cover 3 zone handoff, when they were left one-on-one, their coverage was actually really good. But when we saw on the Mike Evans wide open, nobody in a mile radius touchdown, there was a clear miscommunication issue between he and Blackman, or it may have been Rodney Thomas at safety. So it's the tight zone coverage in the red zone, and it's when we get so spread out in the zone on defense. So I saw the biggest issue in that 4th and 10 conversion that Godwin had. There is no reason that pass needs to be complete. That was a corner route that split the zone that I don't know if it was Jones or Baker, that they had the shallow coverage and the safety could not get over in time because they came out, I think, 4 or 5 wide. Like, that is a true cover 3 beater that Gus Bradley needs to understand is coming on those long downs.
I'm going to go opposite of what you said, JB. I don't think we need to go looking for help in cornerback. I really don't think we're doing bad. We've got injuries just like every other team. I mean, Julius Brents, even after the bye week, didn't get out there against the Bucs. But so you got to keep that in mind with what you saw yesterday. I mean, we were down one of our top man-to-man guys, and I think fairly well contained. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, it's not really that often we're taking on such a talented wide receiver room where you got 2 guys like that. Now, granted, what do you have beyond that? Kate Otten, I guess.
In my opinion, I mean, Evans is a future Hall of Famer too.
Yeah, I mean, we were taking on talented guys, and I'm a little worried about the ecosystem there. If you go bringing in someone like Marcus Peters, for instance, I think that's the name he threw out. I think that as we've got some senior leaders in that secondary room, and Julian Blackman and Kenny Moore. So I kind of worry about bringing another veteran guy in, and we've seen flashes of good football out of the other guys out there, out of Brown, out of Brents, and a few of the other guys too. So would I go as far as saying we need to make a huge free agency signing? I don't think so, but I think that we're in a good path of development for these guys, and we just need to continue to use 4th, 5th, 6th round draft picks to make sure that our secondary stays healthy and lean.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. And Blake, that's a good point about the scheme. I mean, at some point though, like where does the buck stop with Bradley versus the players? Like, I get it, it's a scheme thing, but like we've seen this happen 5 or 6 times now directly for a touchdown.
I think it's situation
like miscommunication directly for a touchdown though. Like the Puka Nacua thing. It happened twice with Evans. Like it's happening every week. So it's like if these guys can't figure out how to do it, then we got to get somebody who can.
Well, again, this goes back to what Cole was saying, man. Like the injury situation is less than ideal. We dropped 2-3 corners from the top of our depth chart because of injuries, and it's like we're throwing guys out there who didn't, with all due respect to Jones, Brown, and Baker, like Baker got benched early in the season. Tony Brown has been a special team lifer up to this season. And Jones was an undrafted free agent. Like, obviously, there's a reason he went undrafted, but obviously they saw enough skill set to be like, hey, we can bring you in and develop. And then with injuries, he's been expedited into this starting role and has, to a degree, thrived because they could have thrown him out there and he could have been your standard undrafted free agent who is just out there as a body just to make sure we have 11 men on the field. But that's not the case. Like, he's stepping up and making some plays, and he's not getting torched all the time. And me personally, like I was saying, what I saw yesterday, I think it's just communication in certain situations. And I saw when the defense was simplified and the safeties were just responsible for over the top coverage, and the corners were left alone to shadow wide receivers or just be in a certain area and not have to worry about doing some sort of handoff bull crap with the safeties. They were fine. Actually, they were even more than fine. And that one, for example, that one completion to Otten, the tight end in the red zone, that ball should have been picked, and that was a great coverage by Baker. He got out-muscled by a tight end.
Well, and not to mention, we're talking defensive guys where if you play 99 perfect snaps, but that 100th snap you give up a touchdown, you're garbage. That's the kind of rough life that you're living as a cornerback and as a safety and handling those situations. I mean, I think it was a Thursday night, just a few weeks back before the real start of fall. Chris Collinsworth was sitting there putting out cookies and milk for the Bills secondary for what they've had and that cohesiveness in that room. And then the same night, I think they gave up to the Bucs. I think they gave up like 230 yards over and pretty much over their head to Mike Evans more so than Godwin. But I guess what I'm getting at is, everyone's going to have some plays where there's going to be some miscommunication and there's going to be issues. It's just, do you let that dictate the game, or was that the exception? And I think in terms of yesterday, that was the exception, not the overall mentality and overall average that we're used to seeing out of them.
Yeah, and I think too, like, exception for the game, for sure, because they did play really well for the majority of the game. But, and I mean, you can tell that baby steps are being taken to clean up a lot of the communication too. But there's still those, some situations where, I mean, clearly they still have more work and more room for improvement to do. And we still have, 6 games left to really hammer it down before, theoretically we are starting playoff football.
Hopefully Juju comes back sooner rather than later.
Hope so. I really don't have anything left for the defense. I mean, the linebackers, we really didn't talk much about them. They played well. I mean, do you guys have any last parting shots for defense?
I have a shot for EA Sports.
No.
Speaking of Colts linebackers, does anyone want to take a shot at what Zaire Franklin was given an overall in Madden to start off?
I know this. It's very upsetting. And also what's even more upsetting is his physical appearance in the game.
I don't know it, so I'd like to guess. I want to say 74.
That's close.
It's very close. It's going to be a 78. A 78 overall.
He's going to be like a 92 next year.
Freaking the audacity.
What was hilarious too is they basically just gave him a default skin tone 6 with a shaved head or a bald head look, and it's very sad to look at. And I remember I did see like a tweet that came out when Madden was first released, I think back in August. He was appalled and, in other words, ghastly, just distraught about what Madden did to him.
He tweeted something yesterday about PFF. He's like, I should be a 100 on PFF.
Well, for his offensive rating for his one snap.
Yeah.
Oh my. Yeah. In other words, Matt Gay, kicker is still good. He's making 83% of his field goals. He had that long 59-yard doink yesterday, which, based off of where I was sitting, would have been good from like 66 or 67. That had some leg to it.
Yeah. He hit that way up off the pole. That was like one of those where I think they just slightly got – I mean, he nailed it. I think he kicked it well. I think it was just they were lined up. He just didn't, get the exact direction that he wanted to, because it looked like it went pretty – for the most part, pretty straight till the very end. Yep. So, I don't know. It's nice to have – I mean, whatever. You miss a 57-yarder, I can live with that. As long as you're making things inside 50 and around 51, 52 consistently, that's what we need most of the time. We're not going to get every single one of those ones that's almost 60 yards, but I think overall the special teams has been really solid ever since the first game against the Jaguars, when Agnew kind of tore us up a little bit. But, I mean, I think they've played well, both coverage and return. I mean, I don't know. It seems like the NFL is kind of trying to take away the return game from the NFL, or from the game anyway.
The kickoff mainly. The punt game is still exciting because we almost had a couple block punts yesterday too.
Yeah, I noticed that one was really close. But, I mean, yeah, it's like 90% of the kickoffs are out of the back of the end zone, or somebody calls a fair catch. So, it is what it is at this point. But I think Rigo's been fine. I don't know that he's been I wouldn't say he's knocking my socks off, but he's been pretty good, consistent. So I can live with that.
They didn't affect the game in a positive or negative way.
Neutral.
So I think in their world, I would call that a positive. Yes. I mean, you didn't do great, but you didn't screw us either. So
yeah. Looking ahead, I mean, big time divisional rivalry game on Sunday. I will be watching from Las Vegas, betting on our Colts, hopefully. I don't know. We'll see what the line. I haven't looked at it yet.
Colts are favored by 2.5 right now.
Are they?
Yes, because
Yeah.
they're starting Will Levis, and they are also being hit with injuries, and not to mention the regression of Derrick Henry. So,
yeah, that's going to be. I mean,
I still despise the Titans.
I think that could be.
That's a trap.
I
That's a
want to say,
trap game in waiting too.
yeah, and I don't want to say necessarily. I mean, part of me wants to say it's the biggest game left, but I know the Texans game will be. But I mean that if we can win that, we're talking. What is that? That's going to be 4 wins in a row. Like really getting some momentum, especially a road win against a divisional rival. I think this is huge. I mean, it's just a huge matchup. We have to be prepared to get their best shot. They always like to come at us. So I'll be curious to see how this plays out.
If it's a close game, Levis has over 275 passing yards, and he should have a vendetta. I mean, I think everyone thought that Levis was a shoo-in for Indianapolis, kind of heading into the draft, just to find out that we were going with Anthony Richardson, and so just and in almost storybook writing form, he goes to Tennessee, and we end up in the same division. The only thing that could be funnier is if somehow the Jaguars traded for Bryce Young. I don't know in what world or any reason they would do that, but Levis has something to prove, and we're going to find out Sunday. Are you the real deal, or is there a reason you came in and backed up Tannehill?
Yeah,
I think it's going to be a Jonathan Taylor game. I just foresee him popping off against the Titans because I feel like they're going to try to take away the pass from Minshew, but I have a feeling that this is one of those games where JT pops off for like 150 or something, or maybe more. I don't know.
the breakout game for JT has been anxiously building for the better part for the last 3 weeks. I'd say 3 games.
And we say breakout game like he's had like 90 to 100 pretty much every game except the Patriots one, but still, I mean, I know what you mean. Like we're the one where he just completely takes over the game. They can't they can't stop him.
Well, it's been established that a Jonathan Taylor breakout game is something over 140 yards and multiple touchdowns.
Yeah, let's go like that Bills game a couple years ago. Let's try to get 5.
I think we might see Josh Downs' breakout game. You look at that Titans secondary, and they've got some talent, but man, they are slow. Yep. They have a very slow secondary. So if I'm going to pick one weapon on the Colts that I know is going to be able to get some separation, it's going to be Downs. The question is, can he get open before it's too far downfield and Minshew can't find him?
They also, since we last saw him, they no longer have Kevin Byard.
Ooh,
and he was their rock at safety for 6, 7, 8 years, I think. So I mean, he was there forever.
Well, I mean, of note, the last time we played the Titans in our 23-16 win, Josh Downs led the team 6 catches, 97 yards, and Zach Moss. That was the big Zach Moss game: 23 carries, 165, 2 tuds.
Well, if it's one thing we can be sure of, we're going to get blitzed all day.
That checks. Gardner best be ready, and we'll probably have Ryan Kelly back. So our starting 5 on the O-line will be together again in happy harmony, and it'll be as JB said, this will be the final game without Grover.
If we can get those plays where we're pulling the guards, with JT effectively, that could be. Oh, it could be sweet.
Red Grover, stop doing 3Ds.
Or eat tainted meat from Mexico.
At least we didn't have the tight end who burned his face up.
That was insane. I can't believe he played after that.
Yeah, I know. Looking like...
Or Jason Pierre-Paul in Fireworks.
I saw somebody just picked him up off of a practice squad. I literally just saw that like an hour ago. I don't remember who it was.
Have you seen photos of his hand? It's gnarly. Like it's just like this mangled looking nub with digits. It's pretty gross. For those of you who
The fact that he's able to play the last I don't know how many years too. Like he didn't really skip a beat.
Oh, this is gonna make me. Who's the guy on the Giants that shot himself? Was it Burris?
Plaxico Burris.
Burris. Okay, that's who.
Plaque in your teeth, Burris.
So no one shot themselves. Oh, I don't want to think about getting shot or getting hurt. Now I'm thinking of
Kelvin Hayden.
Yep. Kelvin
Wife
freaking
stabbed
Hayden.
him in the leg. Killed our
Stabbed
Super
him
Bowl.
in the leg. Killed our Super Bowl.
Ugh.
And if it wouldn't have happened, if it wasn't for your no good, dirty pig stealing great grandfather.
Lord help. Well,
Big game Sunday.
yeah.
I mean, they're all big.
They
at this
are.
point,
I'd
but
say
especially
with
big.
6 games left, if we win 4 of 6 and we finish 10-7, we're going to be in a pretty good spot based off of the way the AFC has basically torn itself apart.
Do we want to do a score prediction for Tennessee?
Absolutely. That's a requirement before we get out of here. So, JB, since you were so nice to begin mentioning it, why don't you start us off?
I will go 28-17 Colts.
All right.
I'm going to go, let's go 34-20 Colts.
Guys, to going for a powerhouse, huh? Okay. I'm going to go kind of an odd score. Let's do 33-17 Colts.
I like how we all have it over 10 points. This is surely going to go well.
This is going to be a overtime thriller at this point, or maybe even a tie because we've had a tie the last 2 years. So why not? Let's make it 3. Screw it.
Hey, we got to keep the streak going, though. We got an episode out this week. We got to keep it, every time we put an episode out, we got to keep the streak going.
Like that. That sprinkle that juju in there. Hey, Juju Brents, come back, baby. All right. Gents, thank you for your time again. We had a fun hour and almost 22 minutes. It's fun. Got to do this again sometime soon, possibly next week.
Yep.
Sure.
All right,
man.
Well, this will do it for Undertaking the Colts. Thanks again for joining us. Hopefully we can catch you all in the next one after another Colts victory. Peace. Have a good one.